Okay, behind the scenes, we've been trying to measure pasture growth through the year. You saw those figures earlier, potential 16 tonne. I think we know we can grow 22 or more. So ideally we would have had those figures, but we've had some other issues to deal with, and I haven't been able to do that exactly. But what my primary work in what we're doing is that Pasture IO is using satellites to pick up NDVI, which is a measure of greenness and ultimately biomass in the paddock. All right, so this is NDVI. You get, that looks like where the maize has come off. You've got paddocks like this may have been grazed, and this one is coming up ready to graze. And you can see there's a difference. Each one of these paddocks is measured by satellite, GPS, and it calculates an estimated biomass depending on that NDVI. And you can come up with, the other point I make too on this is that these images are available every 2 or 3 days. So we do get, misses with clouds, but because it's every 2 or 3 days, we can often get good data coming in, and even if we have to skip a few days. So that's made all this a lot better, and it's automated. We do need to know where the cows have grazed and to calculate a growth curve. So, if the cows have been that day, we've got to monitor that paddock all the way through. So ideally, and this is what the program comes up with, it's actually a whole dairy farm system that behind this is you can record all your cows, you can do a lot of management recording in it, but our particular part of it is saying, okay, in all those paddocks, this is the residual, the green, the blue ones are the irrigated paddocks, and it's trying to give you what, as a feed wedge of how many kilograms of dry matter per hectare is available in that paddock. And that obviously you can have variations within paddocks, and we can compare the two, but theoretically these are the ones that need to be grazed next. And I think, but obviously this measurement taken from a satellite needs to be verified, and so what we've been trying to do is actually do the groundwork, and Dave down there, he's the one that's doing most of the work. And all credit goes to him for what we're doing. But the other thing is that with this data, this is amalgamated over the growth rates amalgamated over the farm, and you can go back over different years and look at, it's not on the slide there, but I think this is last year and the year before. So we see differences in growth rate obviously around what happened the year before. And that's all useful information. And I think the points, and we've talked about it today about having your soil moisture measure, all these things, if we take a step back, it's about providing something that's an objective measure, not just an eyeballing. It's hopefully in time we will have an objective measure of how much past is there, and that's unfiltered by emotion. So if I wake up this morning and something bad's happened, I don't make a bad decision. I've got objective data, and it can be compared, it can be discussed, automated, and as Matt said, he can go back and review these things. But a biggest part of any of these systems is being able to anticipate. You're anticipating an increase in growth, or you're anticipating a decrease in growth, and it's just a lot of it. If you listen to what Matt said earlier before, it's about if I can use this data, I can make a better decision earlier, and I can review my decisions and make those decisions. And he was talking about you're calibrating yourself to what. So even though we're putting a lot of effort into getting these growth curves right, in the end of the day, it's some of it can be intuitive around what you know is happening. So that's just something to keep in mind. But obviously, it would be a lot better if we could get the dry matter exactly right. The theory being that you could allocate your supplements based on how many kilograms per hectare the cows have eaten this day. And that's where we would like to go with it. So we've been measuring pasture height with the plate meter, which is over there, also Cdax meter, which you'll see in the paddock, and we've been trying to look at different calibration. And ideally, this is the sorts of things that that we know happens in research. There's a plate meter where you get this line here, plate meter height is here, and this is the amount of biomass that's available, Ellenbank meter. And those calibrations actually vary over the year, and I'll show you a couple of reasons why that happens, largely to do with the residuals and the amount of stem. But that's the ideal, but as we found, we really haven't been able to get that because of us having to learn some stuff with the machines we're using. Things that I did up at Taree didn't work down here and I was using the Ellenbank meter, and we did some calibration methods which worked well up there. They just didn't work for the Cdax. So we really had to readjust. Now the other thing which is a challenge to this technology all over, and we're not going to actually solve this, is that greenness, as you see these are straight line curves with height, as we get increasing greenness in those images you see, you get a curve that goes like that. And what they say that is it saturates the green, like as the pasture gets full canopy cover, it's green, the satellite sees the greenness, and it can still keep growing, but you're not getting as accurate a simple curve. And that's always going to be a problem with that technology, and we're trying to work out behind the scenes how to get those sort of things happening. The other big problem that we've run into, this is just one of the issues, is residuals, because a lot of this, if you manage it prescriptively and you cut to a certain height, which we do in our trials, and it grows to a certain height, you've got leaf material you're dealing with. But where you start getting kikuyu that develops a thatch, and Matt comes in and grazes the leaf off, the cows don't want any more, but you've got a thatch this high, we go in and we cut that for our calibration curve, and it's, it might be 2 or 3 tonne to hectare dry matter, but it's all useless, So how do we, some of the problem is how do we tell the satellite that is actually no good? And I think some of the limitation around this will be you will have to have a mulching program, so you're just measuring leaf, particularly with kikuyu. And that was part of the reason why we were getting quite poor correlations between the pasture and the satellite imagery, and even between our measurements of the plate meter, because those residuals are really quite lumpy, and that makes it really quite difficult to... And then other things too, that species varied, the amount of kikuyu thatch underneath varied. So the plate meter, we use the Cdax meter, it's got light beams that come across here, and it quite accurately measures the height of what's in between that. They're every few centimetres. We've tested it. It works quite well. Comes up on a pretty horrible console, but we measure that, we take a reading on the console, and we take a quadrat from here. But you can see here this is residual, and it's quite different to leaf, what's the quality of that? It's stemmy, and that's some of the issue that we have to face. That and if the satellite's measuring that, it's still quite a lot of biomass left there. The cows have eaten what's good, but in that particular spring grazing, we had to deal with that. So here, Matt's grown beautiful pasture. It must have been incredible growth rates. This was in August, and there's probably about 6 tonne of dry matter just there, just in that when we cut it. But you can see the structure here. The leaf material is from here up, and the cows are leaving a lot of stemmy material. And just how we tell the satellite that is a big issue. Now, if you went in and mulched to a particular height and came back up again, it wouldn't be such an issue. But we were trying to put a quadrat in here, and it's tufty, and it's really hard when you get these conditions, which happened because you had a lot of biomass and it shrank back to individual plants. So it's very lumpy. In other words, that's, we got very poor correlations with our dry matter. So again, a lot of what we've had to do, Dave and I, is just to step back and say, well, how do we do this? How do we calibrate with these machines? And we've spent a lot of time doing that and getting there. And in the end, one of the other problems with this is when you put the Cdax meter over it, it just pushes it over. You can already see the height's not really reflecting the biomass. So there's all these little things that you have to iron out in the system when it sounds like the technology is going to be easy, but it has its issues. Yeah, and just there's a lot of data around showing that if as you increase height, your stem material comes up and your leaf material stays reasonably constant past a certain time. Now, and that's what we were finding in that particular thing, but what was left behind was quite a lot of biomass, and so it's been hard to work out growth rates and sort it all out. I will go back. We're working with Sydney Uni, and despite those issues, they did look at growth rates and calculate growth rates through these periods. And what we found was that the Cdax on average, and we were doing whole paddocks as well as our own things, but the Cdax was measuring quite a bit below what the satellite data was telling us, and that's the Pasture IO information. So there's a discrepancy there, and we tend to think that we're actually a bit more accurate. So this is what we've got to try and do. There's a bigger project, and in a sense we're doing what Smart Irrigation have done. We're going in and we're monitoring what's out there. We're trying to refine our measuring techniques. Sydney Uni have got a project. It's a total of about 6 million, I think, and we've got one small project out of that, which we will be monitoring more farms using just the plate meter and trying to refine this and get it a lot better. But the point I come away with is that management and technology have to match together. You can't just impose technology and think it's all going to work in every situation. And it's been a challenge, to come here because we found a lot of different things, but that's the reality. And as researchers, we've got to go away and say, well, how do we make this work in this situation? Rather than dictate to Matt that this is what you've got to do, we've got to have that interaction. And hopefully that'll happen in the next 2 or 3 years when we're working with it. Thank you.